Alright, I've been wanting to cut this for a while. This is a Three Sisters garden going on here. I hear a lot of people and I read a lot about growing a Three Sisters garden, but I have not really ever seen anyone do it. So here we are, the very beginning of August, midway through the growing. And what you see here up top, that's the corn. It's done all right. And then I'll get some B-reel to show you a little bit, but on each stalk there's, not every stalk, but there's beans vining up the stalks right now. And then you can kind of see down here some of the squash coming in right there. So then the squash covers the bottom. So like in principle what's going on here is that the corn grows tall, it's a heavy feeder. The beans are nitrogen fixers, they can add nitrogen to the soil, and then the squash serves as a ground cover keeping the weeds down. There's plenty of lessons learned on this plot for me so far. This is the first time I've done this. This was field, and I used the chickens, which you don't see, but they're behind you right now, to prepare this plot for the Three Sisters. I didn't really give them enough time. Like, the weeds are gigantic. I should have done like a deep mulch or some cardboard, something like that to keep the weeds down. It was also really hard to plant into, like you couldn't, it was tough. So it's going to take some time to establish this as a bed and a lot of compost, and I plan on doing a green manure mix in here after I harvest everything out of here. The spacing seems to be all right, meaning I've done essentially, like if you picture a row, like a row of corn and then a row of squash. And then one thing that I just heard offhand once, but like I was always wondering, like, when do you plant everything? The way I did this was I planted the corn first. When the corn was hand high, then I planted the beans and the squash. And the way it worked out for me, like I didn't have enough time to get it all in at once, so like some of the squash came in later. I also want to talk about varieties. What I'm growing out here is popcorn. I'm growing it's like a black Cherokee bean. It's a pole bean that will serve as a nice dried black bean. And then I have alternating rows of butternut squash, Waltham butternut squash, and Pinnacle spaghetti squash. And then I did one row of pumpkins down at the end, hoping to get a few jack-o'-lanterns out of this too. If it works, it's going to be a tremendous amount of food, and that's the point with the Three Sisters. Like, in my own mind, it was like highest yield per square foot of area as far as like food goes, and low maintenance. Like, that's the goal. Like, it'd be happier if I were in there weeding some more, but my goal was to try to build this up so that I don't have to spend a lot of time in there to get a big yield. Okay, one other thing I want to share with you is part of the reason for doing this, like the corn, the popping corn, like I have this ambition of making this corn available for sale at around the Thanksgiving and Christmas time of year. So like here in New Hampshire, sweet corn, like I can get sweet corn, the best sweet corn all season long for 50 cents an ear up the road. Like, I don't eat that much, this much, and I can get it super cheap. So like, that's for that reason, like I'm starting to lean towards popcorn. And then I was thinking, like, this is all speculation at the moment, but if I could get $2 an ear for popcorn as like a I don't know, like, what's the right word I'm trying to think of, but anyway, like a special treat. Like, the idea being, like, I'm going to try to dry the corn on the cob, sell it with a paper bag and some instructions on how to pop the corn off the cob in the microwave, and then a little butter and salt, and like kick back and enjoy the winter. So that's like, oh, and then the proceeds, like the bigger picture, like the proceeds from selling the corn for popping corn would then go hopefully to buy all the seed for my whole garden for next year. So like right now I'm selling eggs, and that makes my chickens they essentially don't cost me anything, which is really like my wife and I have breakfast every day of the week. We have a scramble, and that's our breakfast is paid for. Sweet. Okay, so if I can then do something like this and get my garden to pay for itself without a tremendous amount of effort, like, that's sweet. Okay, and then the other thing is just like the other stuff, both squashes store really well and we eat them all the time. My goal is to try to get 50 of each so that we could have a butternut squash and a spaghetti squash one night a week for almost all year. Like that's the idea, right? So I'm making 2 dinners or about like 2 dinners for the family for the year. And the pole beans, it was actually kind of hard to find a pole bean of a dried bean variety, so if you need that, just let me know and I'll send you a link to where I found those. But anyway, that will hopefully, we eat a lot of black beans like for soups and stews and chilies and stuff, so like now hopefully that will supply all of our black beans. Okay, that's the big picture. I'm going to let you know how this goes, because I think this is really interesting and it's something that I hear a lot about, but I don't see a lot of people doing, and I would like to share the lessons that I learned from doing this with you so that maybe you consider doing it as well. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to me. You can just comment on this video down there, and I'm pretty good about writing back. And you can also find me at my website, newhampshireman.com. You can contact me through that. And if you do me a favor, please like and subscribe to this channel. That'd be great, and I'll see you next time. One thing I also wanted to point out is that I have tried to plant all of these on contour. So I did some contour work, and this first thing up front here is a micro swale. There's a lot of weeds in there now, but there are 5 fruit trees planted in along this micro swale, as well as some comfrey right down here that's popping up. So that's cool too.